Here's the most interesting things that I learned. You can qualitatively measure your own happiness on a scale of 1 to 10. And then later, you can measure it again and see if it's gone down or gone up. This is a very useful thing to do because it gives you a tape measure of what's going on in your life. The more data I read about it, the more fascinating it became. One interesting thing I learned is that people who have an accident and become crippled, typically their happiness goes down by 2 points, 20%. But over time, their happiness climbs up to roughly the same place where it started off in the beginning. People who win the lottery, typically their happiness increases by 1 to 1.5 points. But over time, it goes straight back down to where it was in the past, and sometimes even lower. People who get married experience a 1-point increase in happiness that is consistent and stays forever. The more I read about happiness, the more I realized that it's a very esoteric term. What does happiness even mean? So if you go all the way back to the ancient Greeks and you read Aristotle, the concept that they talk about is called eudaimonia, which is living the good life. Happiness is a state that is too unspecified. The good life talks about human thriving. And in Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle explains this concept that to thrive, really you need to figure out what is a human made for. And so he goes, well, a good knife is one that is made for cutting. A good chair is one that is made for sit on. So what are humans created for? He reasons that humans are created for the exercise of theoretical thought, because it's the one thing that we can do that animals cannot do. I think this is biased because he happens to be a philosopher, but I think every person does have a thing for which they are made. For me, it's to give love. The more love I get to give, the more true I am to myself. And that is the thing that I find gives me the most happiness, giving love. And then there's a bunch of other things that I enjoy doing in my life. And so there's these different areas where I have passions where I just invest myself, and that makes me happy. And what I've found over time is the more I write, the more I get insights into how to improve my happiness over time. There's a really cool PDF I once read by a tech founder in San Francisco called The Happiness Hacker. And he did this very religiously. Every day he would track his happiness. And one of the most interesting findings I found from his research is that there was one thing that consistently increased his happiness by 3% every single day, and it did not go away. And it was making sure that music was playing in the background of his life, specifically refreshing his playlists to have new songs that were bangers. The more you track your own happiness, the more you'll be able to identify what truly makes you happy. Another way of doing this is to do a calendar audit. Go back to the beginning of the year, look at every single event that existed in your calendar, and ask yourself, did this give me energy or did this take away energy? How can you eliminate the things that took away energy, and how do you create more moments of things that gave you energy? Another key to happiness is diversity of things that you do. Don't put all your eggs inside of one basket. For example, I'm working on a startup, and sometimes no matter how hard you work, you need some element of luck. You need something to push you forward. And so I've had many periods where for 6-8 months, we would make basically no progress. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get the startup to move. And that was so demoralizing. And so in every single one of those cases, I found that I gravitated a lot more towards fitness because I can progressively overload the weight that I push. I can be dialed in on what I'm eating. That area of my life is science. It's math. And so there is no element of luck. And so when something in my life that has exogenous variables that are not controllable, the startup, I can always focus on something that I have 100% control of, which is my progress and training. So I know the 5 pillars that are important for me to be happy. Number 1, I need to spend time with people who I love and be able to give love into the world. Number 2, I want to be able to spend time listening to audiobooks. Number 3, I want to be able to spend time writing music. Number 4, I want to have enough ample time to work on Speechify. And number 5, I want to have time to work out. If I have these 5 things, I'm good. And so I never let any of these 5 things drop where they're not part of my life. And I know that if they do, then I'm at risk for being less happy. And so before I dedicate my entire fiber of my being to my work, I make sure that these 5 pillars are filled. Now, I'm about to tell you a secret. This is the number 1 hack for happiness that most people don't know. And the key is gratitude. Here's the thing. Happiness is a perspective. What you expect minus what you get is actually a result. But if at the end of the day you sit with yourself and you start naming the things that you are grateful for, you will magically become happy. This is probably the number 1 reason why I am such a happy person. No matter what it is in my life, I reverse rationalize it for myself and decide why it's a good outcome and convince myself that I should be extremely grateful for this outcome, even if I get an outcome that I didn't want in the beginning. So every day, every week, sit down with a notebook and write down the things that you're grateful for. Your parents, your siblings, the fact that you're alive, how your brain works, how the flowers look outside today. Be grateful for the people in your lives. If I ever feel the need to procrastinate, instead of hopping on Instagram, I will pull out my phone and I'll start messaging people who I love, telling them how much I appreciate them. One other important principle is the idea that you do not need to sacrifice short-term bliss for long-term success or gain. I've met many people in my life who they're so fixated on the long term, that they are willing to suffer in the short term. And my decision has always been that that's not worthwhile. I always want to make sure that I maintain my 5 pillars. I think you can have your cake and eat it too. And the key is just surrounding yourself with other people who are extremely motivated, who work very hard, and then you still get a great social life. You have meaningful relationships. You're working in one direction with the same people who are rowing in the same direction. That's the key, is finding those people. If you find your people, you will be happy, guaranteed. And especially when you're down, they'll be there to pick you up. So if you get one thing out of this video, it's to pull out your phone right now, pick someone in your brain. It can be someone in your family. It can be a friend. Send them a text message or an email. 2 lines. Hey, I was thinking about you. I'm really grateful for you. Thanks for being in my life. That's it. That's all a text needs to say. You'll see that they will feel so positively impacted by getting this message. And even more than that, before you even get a response, you'll feel the freedom and happiness from it as well. Happy listening.